an orgasmic state. And so this can be really detrimental in our lives. Like, let's say if you're coming and your girlfriend's yelling at you not to come, and all of a sudden that gets planted super deep in your body and your unconscious mind that something is wrong with your orgasm. There's some sort of shame or disappointment around your orgasmic state, which can be really detrimental, as I'm sure a lot of guys can relate to.
Yes.
Or when you're in that state, you could plant seeds of self-love, saying, I'm really amazing, I'm creative, I'm focused, I love myself, whatever it is that you're calling into your life, planting those seeds, and they will get in a lot deeper than if you're just consciously saying, I love myself from the part of your brain that is just talking like this.
Sure. You get deeper into the subconscious. It's interesting because you just said something, but I lost my train of thought on it.
While you're thinking of that,
yeah.
I do want to say, if you can, do this without ejaculating, because if you ejaculate, you're going to be depleted and you're not really going to want to go do your taxes. So this is a great discipline practice to be like, okay, I'm just going to build this energy for a minute.
Sure.
And then I'm going to take it and channel it into what it is I'm going to do. Or even before, if you don't trust yourself to get into that space right then and be able to walk away without ejaculating, you can do what we talked about before, where instead of like catching yourself being like, well, I'm about to unconsciously jerk off right now, and then be like, okay, this sexual energy that I'm feeling, I'm instead just going to go pour it into what it is I need to do.
Right.
And just skip over the whole jerking process to begin with.
And this is something that one of the main takeaways I took from our first conversation and applied right away was the next day I was bored working at my hostel, and I just kind of autopilot started to walk to the good old bathroom. And it wasn't to take a shit.
The sexy spot.
Yeah, the sexy spot. I was going to go jerk off, and look, there's certain times where, like, I'm super fucking horny and I really want to masturbate, and that's great to me. But I'm aware that there's times where I'm just autopilot, going to jerk off, and you had advised me to, next time you catch yourself going to mindlessly masturbate, lean into a creative practice.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and like I'm working on writing blogs and making videos and all this stuff, so I'm always taking notes and jotting down ideas. And right then on that next day, instead of going to the bathroom and masturbating, I went and I started writing down and just coming up with ideas. It's not like I had some amazing creative breakthrough, but it was time well spent, and I certainly felt amazing. It was a victory of discipline. And I find in my life that this is something that's very much momentum based. So when I go and I jerk off, wasn't really mindful, I feel empty right after I ejaculate, now I'm tired.
Right.
And I go smoke weed. And then jerk off again because I got nothing to do. And the reason I have nothing to do is because I'm not allowing myself the pure energy.
Right.
So I'm just in this cycle of
right.
doing and doing. And what I remembered what I wanted to say before was that you mentioned bringing intention into your masturbation process. And this has been a word that is one of my top 5 words of the last 2 years as I've really started to love myself more and just live a more free, fulfilling life, is doing things with intention.
Right.
It doesn't matter what it is, but bringing that to the conversation around masturbation and sexual releases, if you will, I think it's important because shit, like thinking about it now, my intentions were just to rub one out. I was never thinking deeper or had any idea that maybe this is a pathway to connect to some of our subconscious thinking. And that's really what interested me about Tantra, and that's why I wanted to have this conversation, to kind of just get 2 homies together talking about it in what I believe is a digestible way. And then if anybody wants to go deeper into learning about this stuff, like we'll give you some direction, but the best thing you could do really is hit up Sureya and talk to her, because she's done the work. She's done her own work.
Still doing it
Still
every day.
doing it.
I'm such a student still.
Yeah.
It's a giant rabbit hole.
But I've learned so much from you, from our just natural conversations, and I was really eager to get you in front of some of my Army of Love homies, the people who are like-minded, that I think would learn a lot. And I remember I was like trying to whenever I'm trying to get people together, like, it's hard. You can't force it.
Right.
It has to flow. And then I remember at the Zamna party, the
Uh-huh.
full moon, when you and Fritz had your hour-long conversation, and oh my god. I was just sneaking into parts of that, and it was amazing. And I have to bring this up. You had to be there. But after the party, where it was like 11 a.m.
The quote of the century.
Quote of the century. You guys go to get breakfast burritos, like post, after party type shit, hanging out. And Fritz and I were like, we're not going to go. And then we decided to walk over and just hang out with you guys for a little bit. In the middle of the restaurant, as we're saying goodbye, Fritz says, Sureya, next time I'm jerking off, I'll be thinking of you. And it was just perfect. Like, he killed it. He killed it. It was so perfect. It was the most, like, tasteful, disgusting thing I've ever heard in my life. And it was,
and so innocent, like,
oh my
from
God.
a place of just such gratitude of like,
Yeah.
hey, I'm going to approach masturbation so differently now, based upon what you told me.
Yeah.
But for anyone else in the restaurant, it must have sounded so bad.
I'll be thinking of you. It is Tulum, so I mean, it kind of just went over right over, was right past everyone's face. But that was fucking hilarious. If you have something in particular on these immediate topics that we've been talking about, feel free, but I was going to dive into just like a general self-love conversation for a little bit.
Yeah.
And obviously we can come back to everything. There's no...
Yeah, totally. I feel like there was something else I had to say about intention, but I actually slipped my mind, so yeah, let's move on.
So if it comes back, just lift the finger. So I wanted to take some time to talk about self-love. This is something maybe I've been practicing it my whole life in some way or another, but I've been very consciously practicing it, particularly ever since my San Francisco sound meditation party. And this is not the time to tell that story, but you better believe I'm going to tell that story. That night changed my life, and a big word of that night was intention. Everyone there, we were taking mushrooms and going through a sound meditation, and everyone had an intention. Like, this is when I realized I was taking mushrooms in college and, like, stumbling into profound kind of shed the ego, self-aware kind of things. And then when you can use these substances with intention, words are words, who gives a shit? But I find it to be more of a medicine experience than a drug experience.
Absolutely.
So anyway, really had nothing to do with anything, but I wanted to talk about self-love and a particular moment at the John Digweed party. What a fucking party that was. See, this is the thing, man. We're going to these techno parties, and we are having some serious life conversations. And at this party, Sureya asked me, Lee, what do you love the most about yourself? And don't be humble. And I thought about it, and I said, fuck. Like, I was really at a loss for words in that moment. And I said, okay, let me give myself a moment to really think about and answer this appropriately. And just having you ask me that question shed a lot of light on my relationship with myself. And thank you for asking the question. And my answer was that I love my ability to connect and exchange energy with people, whether that's seemingly positive or like in a more negative tone about, maybe they just lost a family member or something like this. And being able to connect and feel empathetic to these people that I've been encountering, and whether it's like sending awesome vibes on the dance floor and just understanding like the power of that smile as it goes off all the reflections, or like sitting down with someone and really getting into the nitty-gritty about what's going on in here.
Right.
And the reason I bring this up is because you've gave me a lot of direction in self-love and practicing self-love. And I'm going to share how I practice self-love first. And then I wanted to just ask you to share some ways that you're practicing self-love in your life. And the easiest way that I've found to practice it is consciously treating myself like I would my girlfriend that I love, right? Or even like my girlfriend's grandma. So if girlfriend's grandma is coming over, I'm not going to have dirty sheets on the bed and, fucking pillows without pillowcases. I'm actually going to wash the sheets
Mm-hmm.
and I'm going to make the bed and it's going to be really nice for her to get into.
Right.
But I'm not doing this for myself,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I started paying attention to those things, and it's easy to notice this when you're making yourself breakfast and you can say, oh, I could make it a little bit neater, this and that. But what was almost more interesting to me was in the moments where I'm painting at the hostel that I'm working at and I spill the paint. And I just get this whole like, you idiot. Why'd you spill the paint, you fucking idiot? And like, holy shit, like I would never have talked to Jessica's grandma that way if she spilled some paint. And I think it's this balance of, I'm not trying to live a life where it's like, oh, you spilled the paint, it's okay. Like, that's completely fine. But it's like being real about it. It's like, look, let's take a moment to accept that this happened.
Right.
You were a little bit lazy about putting the paint right there. Maybe it's a better idea to put the paint over there. And let's accept that this happened and let's learn from it and move on. It's not the end of the world. But instead, I'm beating myself up about it. And then I get in that zone and guess what happens? More mistakes start happening. And then more self-hatred, if you will. Yeah. And one other piece on that I wanted to mention, I was talking to a beautiful friend, Channing, and I was telling him we share a lot about where we're at, very open and honestly, amazing friendship, super valuable, and love you, Channing. And I mentioned to him, I was like, man, I'm pathetic. I've fallen into my smoking weed and like eating fucking tons of chocolate every night habit, and like I'm getting in my own way. I'm doing it again. I'm just pathetic. And Channing was like, dude, you're not pathetic. You're fucking amazing, first of all. And the truth is, you're doing the best you can. This is part of your process.
Right.
I said, fuck, man, I love you. Like, first of all, thank you so much. And then I started to realize I would never talk to Channing that way, or you that way. I mean, maybe if you did something really fucked up, I'd be like, you're pathetic.
Right.
You know, but I wouldn't use that vocabulary with a friend that I loved, yet I'm allowing myself to use that vocabulary with myself.
Right.
So I'm bringing this up because I accept that this is the way that I am, and whether I was conditioned or for whatever reason, that's the way that I think and I treat myself. I accept it, but now it's more about like catching myself in the moments, not beating myself up for beating myself up, accepting that, and then just noting it, being aware of it, stepping out and saying, see, like you wouldn't really use this vocabulary with a friend, like let's try to love ourselves a little bit more and be kind to ourselves.
Right.
What's your experience with it? And how do you practice self-love?
Hugely, yeah, I agree with all of that. I think sometimes it's really helpful to kind of create that little schizophrenic split personality thing.
I'm in there. Believe me, the popcorn is watching.
It's really fucking helpful. I was in a sweat lodge ceremony, an all-women's sweat lodge a few years back, and we had to pray out loud for something different each round. The first round was to pray for yourself, and so it's you know, this chorus of women kind of praying out loud over this medicine drum, super beautiful. And the first thing that tumbles out of my mouth is, I love you, Sureya. And it was the strangest sounding thing. Wow, I was like, why have I never heard myself say that in my own voice? Why is that the first time in all these years that I'm hearing that? I express love to the people in my life so amazingly all the time. It's one of the things I do best. Why am I exempting myself from that? All of this love that I feel for everyone else comes from me. So why am I not giving that to myself in the same way? And so that experience of just hearing my own voice say that, it felt so nurturing, and I decided I needed to start incorporating that more often. So back to the whole schizophrenic split personality thing, talk to myself all the time, especially when I'm having a hard time. I'll do mirror pep talks, or I'll just like go look at myself in the mirror and I'll talk to myself exactly as I would like my best friend, or like how I would give you advice or whatever, and just super lovingly like, hey, you got this, you're doing great, I'm really proud of you, like, yeah, this happened and we can learn from it and we can do better in this way and that way, but like, it is what it is. This is the situation, and you got this, you're doing amazingly, and like, you know, give myself some compliments, say whatever it is that I would want to hear from my best friend, or how I would speak to them if they were in my situation. That is like, it's so simple, but it's been really profound for me. And really taking it to the next level, like the things that you were talking about earlier about how you'd make sure that the bed was all made nice and all of this. So like keeping my space really nice, taking really good care of my body, eating things that nourish me in the highest. You know, like I have super luscious date nights with myself all the time where, you know, I'll light candles, I'll get romantic with it, I'll make myself really good food and dive into like a self-cultivation practice, or like treat myself to a massage or something, you know, just doing something nice for myself in the way that I deserve and that I would do for another person. I think it's really important to take that time for yourself and you know, really dive into your self-love in that way.
Yeah, it's something I'm super interested in. It is simple, but it's too simple. But I've totally missed it, you know, and now I'm starting to catch on again to practice. When I did DMT, not to go too far into it, but the quick portion that I remember was that I felt my physical body and Curac-Dahl, everything I know about myself, if you want to call it the ego, that's kind of what I was calling it, was over here. And there was a different energy source over here. You could maybe call it the soul, if you want. Because this is just what I felt. And this is stuff that I was thinking about before anyway, so who fucking knows what's really happening? I will never know. But there was a moment, and they videotaped my ceremony, there was a moment where I brought the two together, and what I remember feeling was, the best way I could describe it was, I felt the love that I give to my friends to myself. And it was fucking warm. So it was just this incredible ecstasy feeling, followed by the thought of, holy boy, do we got a lot of work to do. Yeah, like, I was like, holy shit, this is the best feeling in the fucking world, and relative to how I'm treating myself on a regular basis, there is a huge gap. And I love to identify gaps. There's room for improvement. Life is pretty fucking good right now. And if I know ways that I can practice to get closer to self-acceptance and self-love, or have more of an abundance of that in my life, I'm super excited about that.
Absolutely.
But it was totally this surreal feeling of, wow, like, I'm a fucking great friend. I am a great friend. Maybe that's one of the things I love most about myself.
You're owning that.
Yeah, and it's like, good Lord, pointing inwards. Yeah, like,
absolutely.
You can give yourself tough love. It's not all about, like, life is perfect and nothing's ever wrong. It's far from that.
Yourself.
Yeah.
Right.
It's far from that, but somebody asked me the other day how I practice self-love, and I brought up the point about, like, try to treat yourself like you would your significant other, or just like catch yourself in moments when you don't, when you're being cruel to yourself, and just watch it. And Jake, my friend, found that to be very interesting. And I'm always now trying to talk to friends that are in this similar journey to get their perspective on what they're doing.
Right.
And it's all like in the same realm, obviously, but we all have our own different perspectives, and we're on the same path. To me, this is ultimately an internal journey of self-acceptance and self-love.
Absolutely.
But you better believe that in a community setting, it's helping me to get there. Whether it's through your love and your care, or simply your perspective and your experiences.
Right. And so two things I would add to that is, kind of like on that vein of tough love and of like being real with yourself, but also being in acceptance. Like every fuck up situation or thing that doesn't go, you know, as I planned or whatever, or like a heartbreak, whatever it is, I like to ask myself, what can I learn from this and how can I love myself more? Those are two really good questions to reflect upon. You know, like get curious with it and just like be compassionate, be loving about it, but just reflect on it in a way that you can grow from it and just accept that it is what it is. And how do we move deeper into loving ourselves from here?
Absolutely.
And so much of my work, so Tantra is about like discovering your true essence underneath all the bullshit that the world put onto you since you got here. Because you came into the world just a ball of light, and then society's conditioning and programming and your parents' beliefs and traumas and all these different things get piled onto you that aren't yours. So anytime you have a thought about yourself that's not loving, it's not actually yours. It didn't come from you. So, for example, like body positivity issues that I grew up with, like I had major body image issues growing up, and when I look back on it, none of them came from me. It was like you know, hearing my mom talk about how she hated her legs, seeing in the media how women were supposed to look, my best friend calling me fat when I was 6 and I actually looked completely anorexic, you know, and so taking these things on that were other people's and having such severe body dysmorphia over it, like literally thinking I was fat and then looking back years later and being like, oh my God, I needed to eat. So, but like I wasn't like born in this body thinking these things, and if these people hadn't said these things to me, I never would have thought them about myself. And so these different things, like, you know, oh Lee, you spilled the paint, you fucking idiot. Like, who in your life did you see treat themselves that way? Because somebody else that you observed did that and you got it from them, or somebody talked to you that way when you spilled the paint. And so it's not yours. So if it's not a loving thought, it doesn't belong to you. And so much of the essence of Tantra is like stripping away those layers that are in the way of us really experiencing our true essence, and identifying, like what are those blockages that are in the way of me realizing myself as complete love.
Sure. It's not surprising to me that you bring that up, because a lot of what I'm, at least the way I describe it to people, is like I'm working backwards to become more of a child and becoming more aware of the conditioning that's created my thought processes, accepting that and getting them the fuck out of there. Yeah, exactly. Just it's like I'm trying to become wiser and younger every single day, and it's working pretty nice.
It's a fun process. Yeah.
I wanted to bring up something that you talked about real quick, and that is sort of flipping the perspective on moments of anxiety. And the reason I thought of this was when you mentioned how if something doesn't go as you planned it in your life, that's an opportunity to learn and to look at this. And I'm coming into a space now where when life is good and easy and flowing and we're at a techno party and we're dancing and having a great time, like, believe me, I love the fuck out of that. Like, I will flow through that all day. But I'm getting to the point when life hits me with some stressful shit that I'm accepting my initial reaction to it, and then I'm literally like, thanks, homie. Like, I'm going to learn from this. And particularly with feeling anxiety, David Data helped me with this, and that was, instead of running from the anxiety, to fucking lean into it and learn how to breathe with it. And this is something that I learned at my IT sales job. Something would go wrong on a daily basis. Hey, Lee, our computers didn't arrive and we needed them yesterday. Like, we're fucked.
Right.
And I would just get into this freak out kind of behavior and get super anxious.
Right.
And then I'd start making more mistakes, the spilled paint. And what I came to find was my life is being, at least from my perspective, my life is being hindered by anxiety. Or at least my happiness is, right? And anxiety showing up in my life, and that's an opportunity to practice understanding it.
Yeah.
So I started to get excited about anxiety.
Yeah.
And one of the biggest things, if I could give any piece of advice in regards to dealing with anxiety, at least from my own perspective, it was accepting it first and foremost, and breathing.
That's the nectar.
Motherfucking breathing.
It's everything.
There's a quote, I'm probably saying it wrong, but something along the lines of, fear is excitement without breathing. Now if a big ass fucking bear ran in and tried to eat me, maybe it's because I'm not breathing, and that's why I have fear. I think there's exceptions to the rule.
Right.
But it's just something to think about.
Yeah.
I still haven't really done breathing practices and stuff like that, but through people that I've met, I have this strong belief that there is a whole world of understanding yourself and your connection to this universe with your breath. And it's got to be conscious and practiced.
It's everything. It's our life force. Breathing is actually how I stopped smoking herb unconsciously, because I noticed I was majorly using it as a crutch for my anxiety, just like as a quick band-aid, you know, like, oh fuck, I'm stressed out. And so I noticed that, and I was like, what healthy habit can I replace this with? I was like, I'm gonna replace it with breathing, and then there's this part of me that's like, yeah, right, like that's gonna work. I totally didn't think I could do it.
So high. Yo, you need to hit this.
And surprisingly though, like the first time I tried it, I was like stressed the fuck out about something. And I went to grab the pipe and I said, no, hold on a minute. I'm going to try this whole breathing thing.
Yeah.
And I sat down and I just took some deep breaths. And I'm like, all right, this situation, it is what it is. Like, it already happened. I can't change that it happened. I can either freak out about it and stress about it, or I cannot. Either way, it is what it is.
Yeah.
It's the same fucking situation.
It's pretty logical.
And it's going to be a lot more smoother in my reality if I can just hold it down and ground and breathe through this instead of flipping my shit.
Sure.
And so we always have that choice. Like, we can't change what just happened, but we choose to respond rather than to react. And so,
respond rather than react.
From a grounded place of intention, like, how do I want to approach this situation? Do I want to smoke weed and just numb myself to it, or do I want to breathe and be conscious about how I respond to it? And it actually worked so well in that moment that I didn't have a problem with smoking out of stress anymore. Like, I would catch myself from that point on of being like, oh, I'm just trying to mask this right now. There's a more effective way for me to deal with this.
Yeah, I like the respond instead of react, and it's another thing I learned from my job. Like, corporate jobs aren't all bad. Yeah, I learned a lot. And one of the things I learned is, like, things are going to go wrong with your clients. And I'd get a call from a customer that something didn't get delivered, and I'd start bitching about how the FedEx guy messed up or this or that or that. And I had a partner at work, Josh, who was much more experienced than I. And he would kind of level set me and say, Lee, what happened has happened. What we do now is focus on from this exact moment, like talking to you right now, how do we start making this better for our client?
Right.
And it just made me, practicing that, made me realize how much wasted energy I was spending on, like, bitching about what went wrong or going into the victim cycle.
Yeah.
And then it's this common theme where, like, when I find I've spilled the paint and I start beating myself up, or I get in this victim mentality, I find that it, like, manifests into what happens moving forward. And then I make more mistakes, and then this cycle continues.
Absolutely. Anxiety can be a great teacher when you tune in with it and feel into your body where you feel it and give it a voice. Ask it, what stories is it telling you that aren't true? Like, what ideas are you running like crazy in your head that are not helpful, that aren't true? Like, we often trip ourselves out over things so much worse. Like, often what's our projection of the situation is so much worse than what it actually is.
Exactly.
Yeah, so just asking, like, what are you here to say? Like, what beliefs do I have right now that are stressing me out that might not actually be true?
So I want to talk about that concept real quick. I call it manipulating the moment. And what I mean by that is you are projecting how something is going to be in the future. So whether it's a job interview or, like, I'm going home and I'm going to have this tough conversation with my dad, and I'm projecting how difficult it's going to be and how stressful. And to me, two things are happening. One, I'm manipulating this moment because I'm not here.
Right.
I'm out there
Not
thinking about
present.
this shit.
Yeah.
Then I'm not allowing that moment with my dad to be what it is. I've manipulated the moment with my projections.
Exactly.
And so many times, if I were to have let the moment flow naturally the way it would, uniquely, it would be what it is, obviously. But, like, a lot of times it ends up being fine. But the projections leak into the moment, and they can bring in a negative aspect to that conversation. But to that same point, it's kind of like self-fulfilling prophecies conversation. But, like, isn't there value in positive self-fulfilling prophecies? Like,
absolutely.
Does it go... Because I'm trying to tell myself, like, don't think too much about that conversation with dad. Let it be what it is. Like, don't bring any negativity into it. But, like, if I, on the reverse, am putting all this positive projection into it, I guess I'm potentially setting myself up for disappointment due to expectation.
Well, I think, so expectations are preconceived resentments. So if you can
Preconceived resentments.
Yeah.
Whoa, I'm going to need to think about that one for a while. Carry on.
Expectations are preconceived resentments. So
that's nice.
If you can shift your expectation to a preference, you don't have as much attachment to it, and you're kind of already in this pre-acceptance place of whatever happens, happens, but you can still plant your seeds of intention. So we're the creators of our reality. We're the architects of like each conversation we have. And so if you go and you start to have this conversation with your dad, like let's say it's that you lost your job and you start the conversation of like, all right, dad, like don't kill me, or like I know you're not gonna like this, you're setting the stage to elicit that kind of negative response from him. Whereas if you're like, hey, something shifted in my reality, which I think is gonna open up some new opportunities for me.
Wow.
Then you're setting a completely different stage. And also in preparing for that conversation, this thought of like, all right, don't think about this conversation being negative with dad. If I tell you don't think of a purple elephant, you're going to think of a purple elephant right away. So like everything that we do when we're trying to cultivate new habits, the unconscious mind doesn't understand negatives. It doesn't understand not. So instead of thinking about like, don't think of this negative conversation with dad, think about the positive conversation with dad. Visualize how well it's going to go and like feel it in your body. And this is just a simple manifestation meditation of like visualizing what it is that you want and feeling it so intensely in your body with the 5 senses, like seeing it in HD, how it's going to go, and grounding that vision into your reality. And then, if it doesn't go that way, like you haven't formed an expectation, you're not attached to it, you're like, this is going to be really great if it goes this way, and ultimately, like, how he responds is out of my hands, but I can choose how I set the stage and how I carry myself. I can choose how I respond if he does flip out. I can choose how I respond internally, like even if the whole thing is a disaster, I can choose to take it personally and beat myself up about it, or I can choose to let it roll off my back and just know that I did what I could.
Yeah, that's good advice. And for the record, my dad and I are on great terms. I'm going home to New Jersey tomorrow, and I can't wait to have a conversation with him. So I'm not going to manipulate that moment. Let's just see what happens there, Dad. Is there anything else you want to talk about?
I don't know. Did we cover everything?
I think we covered everything and then some. I gotta pee.
I gotta pee too.
Alright, real quick. Let's talk about this. I found that a lot of the people that I'm inspired by and that I consider to be successful in whatever way that is, they've established a morning routine and an evening routine, but really it's just one step at a time.
Poca.
Yeah, basically, awesome people that I've met, there's a common theme that they have morning routines. And I know we talked about this lately, and something I took from you that I wanted to share was just this concept of allowing your mind and your body to align when you wake up before you pick up your motherfucking cell phone.
Yes.
So, like, the other day, I've been really practicing this and practicing stretching for at least 5 minutes before touching my phone. And there was a day, I don't know, whatever, last week, and I woke up just, like, fuzzy. I was in, like, a weed kind of hangover. And not until, like, 18, 19 minutes later, I really felt like, okay, like, wow, I'm awake. Like, I was kind of zombie mode. And I just started to realize that how many times while in that zombie mode, I'm picking up my phone and just letting all this shit enter my system. Whether it's text messages, whether it's Instagram, social media, CNN news, like whatever it is, I'm just allowing all this content to come into my reality, into my universe. And I almost feel like I'm never even really starting my day because I'm just trapped in this, in the loop.
And you're just leaking more of your energy in that.
Yeah, exactly. So what do you do?
So it changes from day to day, but I have kind of a set of things that I kind of mix it up with depending on what I have time for. First, I try to start by just breathing and giving thanks for a few things, listing some of my gratitudes. Sometimes I speak them out loud, sometimes in my head. Usually it's a great place to start with, like, thank you for this day, thank you for this body, thank you for my safety and my freedom and my home. There's a lot of people that don't have most of those things right now. We're super, super blessed, and I find gratitude is my best medicine when I'm having a shitty day. it's usually because I've forgotten to be grateful and therefore I've lost lucidity. Like, I'm not focusing on what is flowing in my life, I'm focusing on what's not flowing, and then just more shit keeps not flowing because I'm not focusing on what I actually have to be grateful for, and you know, where attention goes, energy flows.
That seems to be a pretty big theme as well. Obviously what you're focusing on is important, but focusing on what you don't have.
Right.
You're never going to be happy.
Right.
Because you're always going to not have something.
Exactly.
And man, you got a lot.
Yeah.
Motherfucker,
always.
You got a lot. Yeah, I'm speaking to myself and pretty much everyone listening with a goddamn phone.
Exactly.
Like, you have a lot going on, and I'm not saying be grateful for your phone. You should be.
Be grateful for all of it, and and your body. I mean, really giving thanks to your body when you wake up is a huge one. Even if there's so many things that your body's doing that suck in that moment, if you have pain or illness or whatever going on. For me, working through that stuff, it's been a huge lesson for me to just be grateful for what it is doing well, like the fact that I can still exist in this life and you know, do what I'm doing because of all the things that my body does to support me. So taking the time to just give thanks for the day and the simple things, like coming back to the simple things is actually really profound, because sometimes we just get so looped out on like unnecessary complicated shit.
Yeah.
Coming back to the root's important. Tune into my breath, take some really deep breaths, and then I do some sort of movement. I like moving into yoga or kundalini or dance, whatever I'm feeling, or even just going out and doing an early morning hike, going out in nature. Any of those things are really good to just start the day. And drinking a lot of water, like hydrating really rapidly in the morning, replenishing your organs because they turn into little dried sponges every night. And setting intentions for the day or some positive affirmations, like really getting in the zone for what kind of day I'm starting. And, you know, starting your day from this grounded place of gratitude and lucidity is going to change how your entire day unfolds. It's like that's why I did my self-cultivation practice right before this podcast, so that I could be in the zone in like this clear space of channeling my true essence, instead of like looking at my to-do list and scrambling around and doing a bunch of shit. When we approach the day from like the cell phone and the news feed and like all of that, it projects that cluttered, scattered energy that's just like not directive, like, you know, it's all over the place, and then our whole day goes like that. So how you start the day
becomes our whole life.
Right. So how you start each day, you know, each day you're reborn again, so make that rebirth a potent one. Like, keep it wholesome and fulfilling in a way that makes you grateful to start that day, instead of stressed out or like absent-mindedly starting the day.
Every moment is an opportunity for a new start, and particularly every morning. I mean, every time you wake up, come on. So if anybody is watching, in all seriousness, I would really, really love to get your perspective and hear what you're doing for morning routines, nighttime routines, what's worked for you, family, friends, or anyone that you know. We're all just trying to share our perspectives here and level up. At least that's what I'm trying to do. And thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Awesome.
I'm so glad we made the time. Love you too.
Oh yeah. All right. They're watching still. Thank you guys.
Thank you.
Seriously, that was great. Oh, I got a piece of that.
Me too.
Hour 7.